Hello, I'm Frost, and welcome to my regular weekly update on all the events that affect the strategy in the conflict between PAPI and Imperium. Welcome back. So, as the title would suggest, things indeed have gone boom in Delve in the last week. But a bunch of other stuff has actually happened that is very relevant, especially towards the end of the week. And I'm going to bring you up to date on all of this. So, first up is to do with structures. So, if you remember if you watched my video last week, I mentioned that a number of Sotiyos and a couple of Azbels, and I think a Fortizar as well, were all put into their final timers. Now, this final timer normally takes about a week for it to take effect, and so this was the week when those final timers came up. Now, once again, put myself into my box, and we've got our dotlan map as usual. Lots of dotlan when I'm doing my videos. And in the constellation, I think it's the light purple one, right? Let's bring up my constellation. There we go. Yep, this one down here, WTAC4U1E, has been where all of these structures were hit. This area has been pretty much secured by the PAPI forces, and they went after the structures. Now, I need to first of all explain about structures and why certain structures are hit and others are not. The reality of it is that structures are primarily ignored unless they are force projection structures. And that means Keepstars that can hold super capitals, as in super carriers and titans, or Fortizars that can hold all the other capitals, so carriers and faxes, etc. and dreads. So those are the ones that are really of strategic value. The others do play a role, potentially the Sotiyos, in the sense that they are able to build more ships, but they are actually secondary objectives. Now, the reason why some Sotiyos are hit is primarily because of their value. It is good for morale for the attacking forces to hit these, as you know, it makes nice big values on the kill board, as we'll see in a minute. And the other reason, although it's not as important, is that the Sotiyos are where you build your super carriers, so your super carriers and your titans. But the reality of it is that the baking time, in other words, the time it takes to actually build one of these titans is, as I recall, I'm not an indie person, but it's well over a month even with max skills. So it's not something that is as important as, for example, with battleships. So, for example, when YZ9 Keepstar was being attacked, the ability to have industry and to build like 1,000, 2,000 battleships overnight is absolutely critical. Now, this doesn't happen with supers. So, you know, if you lose a Titan, you can't just replace it the next day and build a new one. It takes well over a month to do so. And so, therefore, if unless the battle is going to be going on for 3 or 4 months, then the killing Sotiyos isn't that important. But, like I said, for morale, it is. Now, the Sotiyos were all pretty much hit in this constellation QY6 down here. There we go, that one right there in the bottom right-hand corner. If we go to the losses, you can see there's actually 3 here. There's Bottom of the Sea, there's the Amok and the Angelus Mortis one. There's actually a 4th one, but it doesn't seem to have appeared on the kill board. And most of these are normally around 60 billion. But there was one exception, and it was this one, which was in QY6. And funnily enough, came out at 10 o'clock in the morning as well, which isn't in your typical time zone. So I'm not quite sure why that came out in the morning, as that is not the strongest time zone for the Imperium. Maybe somebody messed up their timers, I don't know. But if you have an insight in that, I'd be really interested to know. But if we actually look at it, the reason why it's 185 billion is because of this right here, the Stand-Up XL Set Ship Manufacturing Efficiency 2. This is a Tech 2 rig, and Tech 2 rigs are ridiculously expensive and extremely rare that people put them on Sotiyos. In fact, if we actually scroll down, there it is right here. So you can see that one rig alone is rated at 131 billion. So it is a lot of cash. And so therefore they're not really often put on, but this one was, and so it created a nice high value kill for people to have on their kill board. So as you can see, the other ones, so 2 in QI6, one was in PUIG, and I think the other one was in K-6. I'm not certain, but it was around this area anyway. So those Sotiyos are now gone. They were not contested at all. In fact, the QY6 one, because it was in the morning, it meant Fraternity were involved. And if you don't know Fraternity, they're this big Chinese alliance. They bring Titans to everything. So they brought Titans to this. and brought a whole bunch of them just to shoot at the structure. I mean, they literally bring Titans to a gate camp, so Fraternity are very entertaining in that sense. Now, the Sotiyos are gone. They weren't contested because, as I've mentioned in previous videos, this is an extremely difficult region for the Imperium to project into, and it's kind of pretty much a lost cause now. In fact, in K-6, there is a Keepstar that is actually unanchoring. So they're, rather than have the Keepstar having to try and defend the Keepstar, they're just unanchoring it and going to try and pull it up. Now the thing with unanchoring, you don't really know when it's going to happen. So hopefully they won't get theirs scooped. I've seen it happen in the past where someone's unanchored a Keepstar and someone's been around at the right time for the unanchoring and have actually stolen it. We will see if this happens. In this case, it takes some serious dedication to be keeping an eye on it 24/7. But who knows, there are enough people involved in this conflict that it could happen. So that's pretty much it. So there was a couple of Azbels and a Fortizar as well that were kind of went down in these areas at the same time because they're on grid. They took them out as well. Now, moving on. So that will happen on Wednesday. So the early part of the week, Monday, Tuesday, nothing much happened. So that was the Wednesday. Then on the Thursday, there was a fight in YQX 7U, which is down the bottom here, which is actually in that Querious kind of little pipe that links two parts of Delve. And I believe it was over a Sinojammer or a small structure, a logistics structure. But what was interesting about it, and I will bring it up, here we go, is first of all, Imperium got some good bombing runs. They've been really favouring bombers. Bombers and Cerberuses have kind of been the two main doctrines from the Imperium. Cerberuses because they can fly around really fast and have really good range, and bombers obviously because if you don't actually cover your feet properly with jackdaws, if you've got, for example, battle cruisers or even hacks with your micro warp drive on, like Eagles, then you get hit. And so you can see in this battle report, there's a 23 billion loss here to PAPI compared to a 5 billion loss for the Imperium, and it was primarily down to these bombers. So if I can just find an eagle, it was basically a bunch of Pandemic Horde eagles were hit. Here we go, there's one right here. If we open that in the new tab, there we go. Right, you can see, there we go. Whole bunch of bombs, pretty much did the most damage. It looks like there's more than 7 bombers here, so it looks like a couple of bombing runs that were well timed. So yeah, well done on the Imperium there. They did a good job on that. And then, this was all bombers pretty much, but the rest were just picked off by Feroxes and Cerberuses because they had basically no tank left after that. And as well, you could see from the Sabres, they managed to get a good warp in, bubble the Eagles, bomb them, and then they were finished off by the rest of the fleets there. The other thing that is notable about this particular combat, and it was brought to my attention by someone in the initiative, so thank you very much. There is, a saying that, can I bring my Drake? Because the Drakes used to be the ship to fly back in 2013. It was totally OP. And now it's kind of a non-standard joke to the FC, can I bring my Drake? Well, apparently, if you're in the initiative, yes, you can. Because you can see them right here. There is a bunch of Drakes. The initiative brought Drakes to a fight. And they were pretty successful with them by the looks of it as well. They only lost like a couple, 2 or 3. I don't know if this is going to be a permanent doctrine. I mean, the initiative have so many doctrines, it's ridiculous. But they clearly decided they were in the mood for Drakes and they brought some. So yeah, good on you, the initiative, for doing that. That brought a smile to my face. So there you go. So those are the main things about that kind of conflict that happened. Now, whilst I'm on that, I'm going to mention very quickly, if you enjoy my content, then please hit the like button. Please subscribe, as I'm doing this on a regular basis, and hit the bell icon for notifications so you get told when I release my next video. And then if you want to talk more about EVE as well, I have my own Discord, which is linked in the description. I have an EVE on LAN chat, so you're welcome to come in there and discuss any of the things that I talk about during my videos. And then talking of that very quickly, I would like to thank an anonymous donor for my Heat Surge skin for my Jackdaw. I've been wanting this skin and it's like super expensive, and someone very kindly donated to me. He's asked to not be named as he has learned from experience that just by having his name mentioned on the YouTube channel will get him more decked. And so he has made an anonymous donation, but I just want to say thank you very much for that. Right, so moving on. Then we come on to the standard iHub stuff. So if we go to the timer board, you could see right here, this was on Friday the 6th of November. And you can see that there is a lot of iHubs being contested in both directions in Delve. And this is an ongoing thing, and it covers all of the usual constellations that we've seen. So this light purple constellation on the right, this light brown one here, this sort of beige one at the bottom. All of these have been hit regularly, but the main focus towards the end of the week was this constellation right in the middle here, which is B4H TAC 9W. And if I actually go, here we go, I've got actually a screen grab that I caught right last thing on the Friday night. And you can see these are all kind of got a glow around them, which means that either the TC or the iHub was reinforced. In this case, it was the iHub. And this required quite a lot of conflict. The Imperium were very, very keen on not losing these iHubs because they're a direct pipe to their staging in 1DQ, and I believe that their capitals were mostly in DTAC-W. And so this is kind of like straight to the points of interest. And so there were some conflicts, and there was a couple of battles that I picked up on. So there was one here at midnight. Now this was mostly over Sino-jammers. So primarily the EU time zone has always been clearing jump bridges and Sino-jammers. And then the US time zone has been fighting the over the iHubs, because that's the time where the times have been set by the Imperium. Now what was interesting about this is it escalated to a capital fight, as you can see. The actual trade-off was pretty even. It was like 8 billion on one side, 9.5 billion on the other. There was no carriers lost. The carriers essentially were trying to get grid control and just exchange space superiority fighters, trying to get grid control, but it looks like the fight ended before that control was actually in place. So even though the capitals were there were just no supers, just normal capitals. They just, like I said, traded fighters. And then the main fight happened, as you can see, between Serbs, which I mentioned before, seem to be a preferred doctrine. And then there's like Feroxes, Eagles, Harpies. These are kind of all the ships that are being much more favored by PAPI. Then if we go a little bit further on into the night and we go to 2 o'clock in the morning, there was another fight, once again in NOL. So NOL is right here. It's that system right there, which is kind of a bridging system into all parts of Delve, and where a lot of force projection is done by the Imperium. So in this one, this has been switched now this time. For some reason, the kill board decided to put PAPI on the left and the Imperium on the right. Once again, so this time they were a little bit more successful on the PAPI side. As you can see, it's like a 7 billion to 4 billion ISK. But not that many ships were actually lost. If we actually look, you can see it's just pretty much a mix of everything. There was no specific ships that were lost, like the battle in YQX, where the bombers were very effective and took out 55 Eagles. But the thing that was interesting with this was at the time, this constellation was eventually flipped on Saturday night over to Pandemic Horde. But as I refresh the page, this is a live feed right now from Delve. If I go into iHubs, you will see, there we go, iHubs, that it's now back to Condi. So Imperium have retaken them. Now, as you know from my previous videos, that doesn't really help, because now it's 5 weeks before you can put a Sino-jammer in. So those iHubs are pretty much defunct. It stops, obviously, an iHub from Pandemic Horde becoming 5 weeks in, getting their own Sino-jammers. So, potentially in the long term, yeah, it is good to flip them, but the damage has pretty much been done in this region now. And it'll be interesting now to see where things go from there. Now, as we come into the end of the week, something different happened, and this now comes back to Querious. Now, if you remember, I mentioned previously that there was a Keepstar in 49 TAC U, right there in the bottom. And this Keepstar, the thing I mentioned about that was that the iHub has been owned by Test for more than 5 weeks. So they were in a position to put a Sino-jammer in. And I think it was either the last video or the video before, I said it was really surprising that the Imperium reinforced the iHub, but never actually fought over it. And this seemed to have appeared a couple of times. And I personally would have been very concerned about that, because there is a Keepstar there. And now what's happened is the shield timer got hit on the Keepstar, I think it's Thursday or Friday. And then on Sunday night, the armor timer was hit. Now, there's a Sinojammer in place. So what happened was that PAPI cycled the Sinojammer, jumped in a bunch of supers, and then flipped the Sinojammer again to stop any enemy forces from jumping in. And the Keepstar was attacked uncontested. Now, it's now going to be a week before the final timer comes up. And one of the questions that's probably being asked is this going to be contested? Are they actually going to Imperium going to try and save their Keepstar? My gut feeling is no. The Keepstar in 49U is now basically a flag, it's a totem pole. It has no strategic value. It had a strategic value back in the day before the PAPI forces were able to fully move into Querious, as this particular jump gate between 4TAC07 and 49TAC-U is so long that you cannot bridge capitals across into Querious from catch. You have to gate them. And so to be able to camp with that Keepstar on that gate meant that it would stop the enemy forces from coming through. But the reality is that Fire, Fraternity and PAPI, so that's Legacy Coalition, needed to jump every single capital through that gate, and they have managed to do it, and hence why they then moved to AQT, and then from AQT they moved into YZ9 into Delve. So it is run out of usefulness. The downside to this is that losing a Keepstar can be bad for morale, and this now all comes down to spin. And as you know, I don't do spin, and each side will have its own story as to what happens with this Keepstar. But from a strategic point of view, it makes no sense to defend it. It is dead wood. It serves no purpose. Let it die. Keep all your ships back for a more important battle. And coming on to that brings us back to Delve. Now, I heard that caps were being moved by the Imperium from DTAC-W up to E3. I went to confirm that, and I flew there this morning. I went into E3, and yes, there seems to be a large number of caps and supers. In E3, there is a huge bubble camp on the RF TAC gate, and it looks like the Imperium made the decision to move their capitals from DTAC-W to E3 because it can be more easily defended, because now there's a local gate right here, and then all of these systems in the top left-hand corner here are a dead-end system. Now, the moment they can keep the Sinojammers running and not have it lose any iHubs, then they're fine. But it is still a risky situation. There's still a lot of areas up here that could be fought over. I would imagine, and I'm taking a wild guess here, that this is like a second backup system, and then the third backup system would be the TNT system. If I go over to TCUs, there we go. Down here in ARQ. I mean, if you really want to box yourself in and protect yourself, then you need to do it in a complete dead-end system, and that would be ARQ. Now, if you're wondering, because as you know from previous episodes, the staging system is 1DQ, so why have your capitals in another system? And the reason for that, if you're not aware, is that it is very, very difficult to use your capitals and supers to defend within the same system. So, for example, if you've got multiple structures you need to support in 1DQ, that means you would have to undock your supers and your capitals, and you would have to walk them around the grid because you can't sino within the same system. And so they are much more likely to get caught in bubbles, get separated, etc. So you always keep your capital force away from your staging system if you think you're going to get sieged or you're going to be attacked, because then you can light sinos exactly where you need your capital force to be and drop them right into the exact spot. So that's why they're kept separate. And it's also an indication that makes it very, very clear that the Imperium are well aware that 1DQ will be sieged at some point. And so over the next week, where I see it progressing is I still think that this bottom pipe down here in Querious may get intosists. This one down here, let me go back to my constellation names again. So down here in a 4QZ-2M, I could see this being intosist, sorry, I went the wrong way there, and go back to my Delve map, I can also see this area again, maybe being flipped again. It's not that important at this stage. I think that personally, PAPI may try to go storm the E3 gate and create an iHub contest over on this side. I mean, it'll be difficult to do, but it can be done. It really depends on doctrines that are being used. I mean, interceptor fleets could get through there, and you could do it potentially with just a bunch of interceptors, but that remains to be seen, and we'll know next week. So next week I'll also be reporting hopefully on what's happened with this Keepstar in 49U, and we'll see how much further PAPI are able to progress and what kind of counters we can expect to see from the Imperium. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope I've got you up to date on everything. If you have any questions, then either hit my Discord, please post comments. I'd love to also hear your thoughts. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Thank you for watching. Until the next one. Bye.